Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's Alisha Brashay here at Cosmic Gateway, and I am joined by Nick from Om and Alpha. Nick, welcome. Thank you for being
Yeah.
here. We attempted this about a week ago, didn't we?
We did on
And
our little retreat.
yeah, so
Yeah.
a little bit of an update. Nick and I have been up on a retreat that was hosted by myself and Irina. So big shout out to her and a big thank you for being the visionary and bringing that together and bringing like-minded souls together for a couple of days in a beautiful rainforest area. It really was such a transformational experience for everyone, and it was the first time that I get to meet you in person, Nick. So that was really cool. So that's, I guess, we've spoken about it, and probably get Irina on here at some stage, but that was really the test driving of what we're hoping to unfold, throughout this year and the coming years, is really about bringing people together in the physical. I especially after last year, and how separated we are in a physical space, and sort of reversing that and bringing people together. And there's a real need and call for that. So it certainly came together in really magical ways, didn't it? It just
Yeah,
really
just
unexpected and sort of magical ways. So keep an eye out. We don't have any sort of dates at this stage. It's all sort of tentative, but if you keep an eye out, if that's something that you feel called to, especially now that a lot of people not wanting to travel sort of overseas, or the whatever's happening there. I'm so disconnected to it. And I don't know if you would agree with me, Nick, but where we were in that space, in that very, very sacred space, felt to me like this is New Earth right here. Everything that we experienced as a group coming together. A couple of times I had to sort of go out of that space, and I could feel the collective, and we'll touch on that too, the collective energy at present, and how murky that is, and how discombobulating that the energy currently is. And it was like every time I went, I could feel it. I could feel like the agitation creeping up. I could feel the anxiety. I could feel the pressure cooker energy. I'm like, oh, back to my little paradise. So, I mean, how did you feel about that, Nick? Because obviously we all had different takeaway experiences.
I think you're right about that New Earth feel, because particularly with the group we were with, it was just so cohesive, and it was a really gentle, natural, loving environment to be in. It was something that I'm guessing most of us haven't been in quite a while, if at all, for me. And I think that's a combination of the area that we were in, and also the quality of people that we were around. But I did notice, I did the 9-hour drive there from Sydney and back. And when I left on the Sunday evening, as I came in the wee hours of the morning to Sydney, you can just feel the heaviness, that and the smell.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know what that is. I couldn't believe it. I didn't realize how much we stink. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up, because driving through, so I drove up from Melbourne, so it's about like 18-hour drive. It's been pretty intensive for me, and Anna joined me on that trip. And as we were driving through Sydney, I was like, what? I was like, is it my car? Is it? Oh no, it's outside. What?
Yeah.
I think is it the pollution? Is that?
I don't know, to tell you the truth, but it's it's interesting. It's probably is something to do with pollution, I guess. Whatever it is, it's not good. All the concrete, bad drainage. It's just, there's nothing good.
I always joke about how I become a feral human when I go to Sydney.
Yeah.
So I try and avoid Sydney at all costs, and I have been there a little bit over the past few years, and I notice my energy change and I get quite frazzled. And I
Yeah.
think it's just because it's just like the environment.
Yeah.
Um,
So I'm on the outskirts, but
yeah.
even when I go into the CBD, it takes me a good day or so to start to adjust and sort of de-louse from
Yes.
the heaviness and yeah,
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
good.
No, you're in a nice part because I think on the stopover we stayed not far from where you are, or,
Yeah,
in
okay.
that region. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, this is nice. This reminds me of home,
Yeah. Yeah.
around the
Well, that's
mountain.
probably because of the mountains and the bush and stuff like that, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not too bad. We're close enough. Yeah. But I'd like to live up where the retreat is, to tell you the truth. I was thinking about not leaving.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I still do think we should have staged a hostile takeover and I know it's not very peaceful, but produce weapons and yeah.
Yeah. God,
Yeah.
it was so magical. It was so
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
It reminds me of where I live. It's very similar to
Mm-hmm.
the energy is very similar to where I live. Feels like home.
Yeah.
So, but I also, I think a big takeaway from the week is like trying to create or tap into that frequency wherever you are as well.
Yeah.
And spread that, because it really was, going back to what I was saying, it was really a new earth experience. But I think the whole point of that was to embody that energy and then take that back to our little pockets in our little corners of the world.
Yeah.
And it was great that we had, and shout out to all the amazing people who attended and joined in that, who came stretched across 3 states. And I'm sure that everyone had their own little takeaway and that energy. But what was some of the biggest experiences that you went through in reflection, or what was some of the more transformative things that you
Yeah.
went through?
Well, so for me, just connecting with everyone in the physical was huge because I'm not the only one. I'm fairly isolated where I am from the community and the people I know. So that was probably one of the biggest things. But we also, it's interesting the dynamic that was there. There were certain things that I've been meaning to do for a while and stuff like that. And we were with a group of people who some might call it peer pressure, but yeah, it was a group who and I realized something important about good friends is that good friends know how to push you outside your comfort zones. So we did like James, a guy who I last interviewed and has previously talked about screaming in the woods as a bit of a release. He called me out to do it while we were up there, and fortunately Nat was listening on that interview, and when we got up there we went for a walk up. It was one of the steepest mountains I've ever circumnavigated. And when we got to the top there, I got called out by the crew and I did everything I could to get out of it in usual Nick style. But they held me to account, and I screamed in the woods. I pulled some muscles down my side. My throat, my voice started to go for, took a day to come back fully, but it was.
How did you feel after that?
Yeah, it was a really good release. But you know what? More so than anything, it was the fact that if I didn't do it, I would have been disappointed that I'd missed that opportunity, because I still am one of those people that knows I should do something often and doesn't follow through. So that was one of the, even we had that watering hole, the swimming hole down near that stream, and it was like surprisingly it was like Arctic temperatures in there. It was freezing. And yet again we talk about the there's a whole thing around the ice baths.
Yeah,
this wasn't quite an ice bath, but
close enough.
Close. Yeah, and so when we got down there, I was determined I wanted to jump in, and then I put my foot in, and I'm like, man, that's cold. That's going to be uncomfortable. And yet again, Johnny, Anna, the rest of them did not let me pike out. I jumped in, be it all for about 30 seconds, but yet again, an experience well worth the while. And I'm glad that I did it without piking out. So that was the big thing. But then there was also it was the reset and activate retreat. And I know since getting back, I'm feeling very activated. I keep forgetting that this stuff happens with your activations. I'm sure I'm not the only person, but I just would like if people remind me every time I sign up to one of these that there are repercussions, and so now things are just coming in from it, but all really good stuff.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. So I guess what I'm hearing, like in reflection of what you're sharing, is a lot of pushing out of your comfort zone, but in a way that was non-threatening or that would put you into resistance. Because I mean, we've spoken off air, and I joke about how I'm incredibly stubborn. Someone tells me to do something, I will get indignant and not do it, or do the opposite. But there is something about the loving, compassionate vibe that comes through when it's soul family. It comes from a different space. It's not coming from you should do this, because it's coming from, we love you and we want to like help you expand and grow, and we're going to give you that little nudge just to tip you into
Well, and some of these people, like, I'd never met before that retreat, and they were the same people doing the same thing, like Ben from Unity Earth, and Will from Vibro Sound Healing, and all of that. So those guys really sort of stood up when they could have just turned away and gone, I don't really know this guy, but they certainly got in a bat for me. So
which is beautiful. And there is a video circulating privately at this point of your experience, a little like highlight reel of
it looks like a movie premiere.
It does. And I would never do this without your permission, but I'm so tempted to post that and make that go viral.
Look, you know that I lost all my dignity long ago. So I don't think it really matters. At this point, it doesn't really matter. It's only up from here. So yeah. So you can put that out there. To tell you that Nat did it, and she actually did a really cool job of it.
Amazing job.
Like, she went through a lot of
that girl on the payroll. I need
better. Yeah, she can make all my weird memes from now on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're talking about the activation and like what came through for you in that sense, because I just want to pick up on a few things that you spoke about, knowing that you should do things and not necessarily putting them into action, and now that sort of process. If you can talk a little bit about that process of driving home and sort of what came through and what has started to unfold from that.
So I think from a larger perspective, I feel like at the moment, and I know it's only we're just approaching a week now. Well, we're right on a week since that retreat, but I've in the lead up, I felt like I was getting messages to start to connect more with the heart, act from the heart, make decisions that way, and I sort of got out of a lot of the more messy topics and things like that. Focus on bringing in light and positivity. And I said to you before the retreat started, maybe a couple of weeks before, I feel like it was a culmination.
Yeah.
Sort of like we're hitting that point, and downhill we go. So we came out of the retreat, and I'm plenty of time to contemplate.
9 hours.
Chill out. Yeah, 9 hours to myself. And I can feel myself sort of in that more heart-centered space. So probably a couple of hours into the trip, I get this download that I need to start data collection. And it was data collection around the masculine, men. I think there was, at a conscious level, there was reason behind it. I mean, the push came from I like to call it my divine recruitment manager.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically what's come out of it is that I need to start to connect with men and create a space where they can anonymously, privately and in complete confidentiality, share their experiences on a one-on-one basis. And basically what I'm going to be doing is building a database of their perspectives, experiences, on their awakening and spirituality in general. So a lot of that's going to be around relationship stuff, understandings of, say, I hear a lot of women talking in these circles talking about counterparts and twin flames and all that sort of stuff. And I'm trying to gauge where men are on that sort of stuff, and then sort of building out to an overall picture of where they're at spiritually and that sort of stuff. So while I've been told that at the moment I've sort of been shown it's purely a data collection exercise, I've automatically started thinking of the bigger picture. And so I sort of look at this as the more information and stories we can get, then we can start to correlate constants and regular themes, and this will develop into something that can help support men more in this journey. Because one thing I noticed with my podcast is that I wanted to get a lot of regular guys who were going through their own process, and there's a huge reluctancy to talk. It's different for someone who's been in it for a while. They're now practicing a modality. They're happy to come on, but it's hard to get these guys that are just sort of joining the show or just sort of going through things in the background. So I guess that's why this came through, to create a space where we can sort of circumvent that and start to understand, because I understand my perspective, but there are still gaps collectively. And I'd like to answer a lot of the questions that come my way, because I can answer them from my perspective, but I can't answer them from a larger one. Yeah. So that's where in a couple of days I've got a website. Basically this is
boom, just boom.
Announcing it. So it's called the Conscious Man Project. Mm-hmm. And that can be found at consciousmanproject.com.
And I'll put all the details in the description box.
Yeah. Or I can be emailed at hey@consciousmanproject.com. And I just want to encourage, particularly, because there's going to be there's plenty of guys who watch this, but it doesn't matter where you're at in your journey.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you. You could have just suddenly had your first experience yesterday, and that's just as valid as anyone else. So what will happen is, when you fill out a contact form or an email, for now we'll send you a link with some potential times. Find a time that suits, and we can jump on Zoom. You can either turn the camera on or off. I don't care what name you give me. You can get creative. Pretend you're signing in with a QR code somewhere, and you can just put a pretend name. And no one will get your details, and audio will be kept of everything. But we can then, at some stage, start to break down everything we're getting, and maybe gain some really interesting insights. I know something is going to come out of it. So, yeah.
And just to reiterate, it's completely anonymous. So if you do feel the call to, connect with Nick, and that can be a really empowering process. And I want to encourage people to do it, or men to do that, because I can see, or I've seen for a long time, that is part of the gap. Because women tend to talk amongst themselves, and it's really through, and I've always said this, it's always the power of conversation and connection can bring such transformational shifts within your own process, because sometimes just by speaking to someone else, you get that clarity. It's almost like that sorry, my word, I not connecting, but it's like that reflection coming back to you, and your own speaking out aloud can highlight so much for you where you may been stuck or not had, you know, perspective or clarity. And so just that act in itself, in seeking out someone to talk through some of the deeper parts that haven't been verbalized is really empowering, incredibly empowering. And this is you know, hats off to you, Nick. And this is a project that has been something that's been really, really close to my heart for many years. And, you know, going back, I got a download and wrote many articles around this. And go back a couple of years ago, where I kind of tapped into something that was going to happen in the collective, of like a big transformational shift happening with collective masculine. You know, some would liken it to like a mass awakening or a mass sort of tower moment. I never really saw, I read into the energy, so sometimes I don't really see how that's going to appear on the physical. And I've certainly noticed the patterns over the years of every April seems to be hitting more of that incremental point. And how I see it from an overview, higher perspective is that, and I think we've spoken about this a few times, like on videos, how crucial the masculine impact is into the overall ascension process, whether that is in you know, in divine partnership connections, but also in the greater ripple effect, because the way that I see it is the masculine are very connected to the physical realm, the 3D plane, and that's what we're trying to transform, that nature of reality. And there's a lot of higher level work that has been done through the etheric that then has to bring it into the physical, just like the ascension process. It's like we, you know, bring in higher consciousness as an energy, but we have to embody that and then take action with that. And so the way that I've always seen it is like to have men en masse, let's just call it, you know, making those big shifts and changes within their own process and energy changes the game. Boom, like that. So that's what gets me excited, because it's like, if we can support that process, and, you know, I always like to think that I have a good insight into it, but I'm not a man. You know, I have a very strong masculine aspect that, funnily enough, I wrote a post prior to the retreat, because I always go through a big process, whether it's a transmission that I'm holding, a retreat. I always know that I'm going to go on a deep dive. And this was certainly no exception. I feel like I've been in the trenches for weeks, if not months now. And I really felt that process for me was, I'm going to get emotional now. I felt like it was a masculine aspect of me that has carried me for so long, that has protected me, that has fought, that has done all those warrior type things. And I felt like, I felt like that aspect no longer has place in my energy, in my world. And it's really funny, because there's a grief process that goes with that. Don't worry about me, guys. This has been me for a week now. I can't control the tears. And it's learning how to function without that, you know, because that's that aspect that is highly protective. And it's like, I guess the guidance that I got was, you don't need that anymore. And it's like then trying to find your identification without that, you know, strong, I want to call it false front, honestly. And I think this process for me has been more embracing in my own feminine energy, which I would say that for most of my life has been a less dominant aspect. Yeah. So, you know, when I talk about this masculine transformation that's happening on the planet, it's happening to all of us, no matter what gender we are, because we hold both.
Yeah. So I know firsthand that you're not the only, woman having a similar experience of releasing a lot of that masculine energy that they've had to carry excessively for a long time. So it'd be interesting to see how many maybe chime in the comments with that, because like there's people that I'm not talking to or that weren't at the retreat, for instance, that that are probably going to really resonate with what you've just said. And from a masculine point of view, I mean, you go on YouTube and Google whoever the popular YouTubers are in these circles, and they're all talking about this masculine shift. All the men who are tuned in enough to be perceptive to it, and even some of the ones who aren't, are going through their own small shifts without realizing what it is. I think I said maybe on the last round table, there's guys who are still in that very I guess that more negative masculine place at the moment. But I'm seeing them talk about certain books that they're reading that I know for me were on the path to where I am now, and merely a starting point. And I'm surprised that they're consuming that sort of stuff. So it's happening, and I guess it's happening for the feminine too, that they're releasing a lot. And this is where the balance will continue to be found.
100%.
Yeah.
It's there's so much I could say about it, and like the downloads that I was getting about, and this is just my perspective, this is what comes to me, right or wrong, but I think I've always understood within my own process that my feminine energy is my superpower.
Yeah.
My emotions, my empathy, that is a force to be reckoned with. And then when you match that with aligned, empowered masculine energy, you can literally make mountains move with that energy. It's a force. And I'm talking just purely internal process right now.
Yeah.
And I believe that every person has that capacity. And I know what a journey this has been for me over decades to be able to break down. And it's embedded in society. It's not just me. I talk about how I grew up in a predominantly masculine, family, but it's society in itself. And it's that, that drive for success, and to prove yourself, and, to overextend yourself. And there's a lot of inauthenticity that comes with that. And there's a lot of masking of the authentic self. And, when I started my own personal development many years ago, I think back of how detached I was from my emotions, or I allowed my emotions to rule me in an unhealthy way. And it's been such a journey to be able to own and claim and wear with pride that emotional depth that runs through me, because it actually is a superpower. And I think the reason that I am sharing that is because I can see that in men as well, how they've been switched off from that component, which is their feminine aspect.
The minute you said your superpower was that feminine aspect, that to me feels like more a collective thing than just a individual thing, because I think for me, I feel that I have a strong feminine aspect. I don't know what perception is from the outside, but to me, I've always felt perhaps even a little bit more attached to that feminine aspect than I should be. And that seems to be coming into balance now. But I would see, particularly as a masculine, that my feminine aspect is my superpower, and it'll be other people's superpower as they begin to balance that out.
Yeah. And I think that's, you know, the more people that do that, the more that happens on a collective level, right? You know, because we're all in one unified field, and the more balance and equilibrium each individual can attain, that's where the superpower comes in, and how that ripple effect in the collective. And I know that you've been talking about this for a while, and I've had like session upon session upon session upon session that's been coming through, that's talking about this big thing that's on the horizon. And I don't like to make predictions because I know that timelines are variable. But it's been really consistent for months now, about this kind of, and I did post about this, and I'm going to start to share more of the messages that come through sessions with permission from my clients. But I think that that's really important to help people navigate what's happening, because when we look at it from a very physical perspective, I'm a why person, right? I always have been. I need to know why. If I know why, I can go through anything. But if I'm left in the dark and I don't have information or understanding, I become a feral human being. I'll just put it out there.
Yeah.
And I think what's so insightful in the work that I do is that I get to see this bird's eye perspective of what's happening in the ether, in the non-physical, to be able to relay that to clients to help them path their process with a bit more grace and ease, with a bit more insight and guidance of how to navigate tricky energies. And what has come through is very much based around this whole sort of slingshotting, catapulting. Like there's this threshold that we're working towards in the collective field that is what's coming through to me right now as I say that is the beginning of the foundations of new earth frequency and living. And I mean, there's absolutely no doubt. I mean, there's tangible evidence when you look at all the sun activity, the solar activity, and the cosmic radiation that's happening, that is at its peak. And it shouldn't be technically it shouldn't be at its peak. It shouldn't be hitting it. I mean, it's not at its full peak, but we've only entered this solar cycle in the last 2 years, 18 months, give or take. Solar cycles, I believe they go for 11 years. And it's the sun activity that's happening it should be where what is forecast wouldn't be happening for another 2 to 3 years. And I find that really interesting, because if, once again, tying it back to what we're talking about, the masculine energy is connected to the sun, you know, the sun, solar plexus, masculine energy. So you can see this acceleration that's happening. And it really is, for some people, really putting them into pressure cooker state to be able to make those shifts and changes in their life, in their physical life. It's a very physical emphasis at the moment. Yeah. Which is the masculine energy, right? So bring it back full circle.
It is full circle, isn't it? Yeah. So in a certain way, part of that balance is, in certain aspects, you're coming into the masculine, as well as, because sometimes you picture, I guess, disconnecting from it, that it has to go. But it's just, it's not necessarily getting rid of it. So we still need to be taking that action. Yeah.
It's the refinement process, really. In, you know, different terminology, you know, like distorted or wounded, masculine, feminine. It's refining that to step more into a divine embodiment of those characteristics and energy. And balancing them out. And that's a big process. I mean, that's huge. You know, and I laugh at what comes to mind now, and I laugh about it. Like, I think it was in talking about soul family, like calling you out lovingly. And I remember it was Lockie that called me out. I think it was about 2007, 2008. And he was the one that started talking to me about this. And he said to me, you have a very dominant masculine energy. And he's like, you need to embrace your feminine. And like that just made my skin crawl. He was like, look at how you dress. And that goes back into society because I was always working in corporate world. So I was always trying to mimic that masculine energy to get ahead.
Yes.
Be successful.
Yeah.
I was always wearing suits. I effing hate still to this day, I have aversion to wearing skirts and dresses.
Yeah.
But that's okay, you know. And so after that conversation, I really took that to heart, not in a bad way, but a reflective way of like, how can I embrace more feminine qualities? And I did it in a very masculine way.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm just going to go and buy a lot of orange. Those who don't get connected to the sacral chakra. Yeah. And so I started wearing orange and eating orange. I mean, and that's a good way, right? You know, that's the starting point. You know, a lot has transpired, but you know, it's really about embodying those attributes. But you know, that was a start. That was a starting point for me. So it's been a long journey, and it's been a conscious one, but you keep getting to more layers of what that truly means, I think. Yeah.
Well, that's been a big observation I've made, and this is for a long, long time, about women. So I think to politics, right? And hear me out here, all right? Anyone who's listening, don't get outraged in a split second and smash the screen. We don't need more women in politics. We need more feminine in politics. You know, because you've got a lot of these women there's women in there, but they're behaving like men. Because whether they have to or whether they think they have to get to wherever they want to be, that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so beautiful to say that. And I think that goes across all, not just politics, but business, like all aspects of our industrial world or radically transforming world. We need more. I always see the feminine as the one that connects with the divine, the ether, the spirit, the non-physical. And that's where the divine guidance comes. And so when we're in that energy or have access to that energy, that's where the intuitive guidance flows. And then it's our masculine aspect that takes that guided action and puts it to the physical world. And I agree with you in the sense that I had an amazing boss years ago who was a CEO. And I remember actually it was all around that same time. It's interesting how multiple things come to you at that. And she was incredibly successful CEO in her early 30s, coming from a different country, you know, having nothing and starting from scratch in Australia and having all the odds against her. And her focus, her vision, her passion was to change women in the workplace to be more feminine and stop mimicking the men.
That's amazing.
And
you know what, that's so true, because you look at I had to last year for a period work for a major postal company in Australia. It's not hard to tell who it is. And the way they treated people was horrible, and it's the first time I'd ever been an employee. And I have a massive amount of empathy for employees now because they're treated like dirt. And that's because of that masculine aspect. And she's so right, because, I mean, you talk about New Earth, I see a massive shift in how business is done, where the employees are looked after and it's not profit over people, because I mean, the heart and soul of any business is the people, right? You need them to be looked after. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And I've always had this, I mean, I'm so passionate, almost to an extreme, and I'll be honest about that, about people doing their soul mission work, because I believe that that's how we change society, and take the power away from the larger corporations.
Yep.
Is empowering the individual to work on what is truly resonant within their heart and how they can make a difference, and be provided for and be abundant in doing that, and be in service in some way. And I've always seen a world where that is the case. And I think we're working towards it. And you can see so many more people now, especially after last year, you know, looking for that career change, that vocational change, because it's not resonating with their soul anymore, you know. And I'm quick to call people out on it, only because I was there.
Yeah.
And I resisted it. And you can call someone out really quickly on it when you've walked that path.
Yeah.
You know. And like I said to you the other day, like, I floundered for 2 years. When I look back, okay, it was necessary and I had to go easy on myself, and I was going through a big process, but I'm incredibly critical of myself. And I look back now and I was like, I just wasted 2 years. Like, I could have got on with it.
Yeah.
Because once I finally got into doing it, it changed me, you know, in so many magical ways.
Yeah.
And like I was saying to you, like, I'm now back in sessions, but stepping away from doing this work is not work for me. You know, it's a lifestyle. It's a way of being. And when I'm not doing this work, I become an absolutely horrendous, cranky human being.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was like. I mean, I'm a bit more chilled out now. I mean, I'm not quite doing that sort of work yet, but I'm heading in the right direction. All this stuff will lead to that, even though it's not for financial gain or anything. I know that ultimately that abundance is going to flow through as a result. It's done. Actually, it's funny because I got a guy that I'm going to interview on Saturday, Tony Sutcliffe. He's down in Victoria and he runs sweat lodges and things like that. And you know him?
Yeah. Well, not personally, but yeah.
Wow. He's just a fabulous guy. I spoke to him for about 10 minutes and he was like that. He was like, I'm so grateful for what I do and all this sort of stuff. And you can tell how aligned it was. Like, I wanted to record right there and then. I was like, come on, let's just talk.
Yeah.
Because I can't wait to talk to people like that. I mean, I just love that. Yeah.
It's so inspirational, isn't it? It really is.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I think a lot of the barriers to get through into that, I think we create a lot of barriers within our own psyche. And I think that's a lot of societal conditioning and programming, that you can't be self-sufficient doing this work. You know, there's a lot of programming around, and I still see it, and I went through it, is around, I shouldn't charge for this work because it's a gift from the divine.
Yeah.
You know, and I kind of go, well,
yeah,
it's time, it's energy, it's
abilities. An exchange. Yeah.
It's an exchange.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, not that I follow that practice or principle, but in the story of how Reiki originated, and I'm going to hash this story up and at it, but you know, it was offered as a free thing, and people weren't taking on the level of transformation that was possible because there was no exchange. And then, you know, it wasn't as effective because it was almost taken for granted.
Yeah.
But when there's an exchange,
Mm.
then it's taken a bit more, I don't want to say seriously, I can't think of another word, but
that makes sense. I mean, they say that with courses and things like that. If you offer a course that's $100 versus one that's $1,000, the rate of people who complete that course reduces significantly. But even down to the fact that if you aren't drawing an income from that work, you then have to go and find another way to get income, which is taking away from that work. And it's going to affect, one, the amount of people that you can help and the quality of that work. I mean, most people in these circles, you book a session, and if it goes longer, it's like they're there. There's no, oh, we've it's not like the psychiatrist.
oh,
Oh,
hours up,
you've got it.
off you
Yeah.
go. Yeah.
But if you didn't have that, if you weren't funded and you did have to work a regular job, you would have to do that. So it's an important part of the whole thing. It really is. Yeah.
Wow, we've really dived down some
Yeah.
spaces, haven't we? Yeah, and I think that the final things that I want to say that's sort of floating around my head is that I don't even really know how to put this into words, and I'll try and give an example. But in living in a path of soul work and soul mission, one thing that I always share with people that I learned, and probably the hard way, because that tends to be how I say that used to learn. I listen now.
Yeah.
I do what I'm told. But and when I say that, just to clarify that I listen to my higher self. But sometimes doing things in that right direction, even if it's not paid for, abundance comes in other ways.
Yep.
Yeah. And if you're being guided to take action to do something, you can't allow too much logical mind interference. And that's a really big process in itself to unravel. But it's like, if I take this step, the universe will meet me and support me in that. And it's massively for faith. It really is. And it's only one that can be understood through practice and experience.
Yeah. And trust.
Yeah.
Trust is the word that's been coming up all over the place for me. And it's no coincidence, the timing of it, because at the moment I have a ridiculous amount of trust in what I'm doing and what will come of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so grateful for the work that you're doing and embarking on at this point in time, Nick. Like it really, as I said, it's very special and close to my heart, because I can see how important it is and how it plays into the greater whole perspective of what we're all working towards through this planetary ascension process. And genuinely, want to help the dudes.
I feel like too, I don't know if I touched on it before, but I feel like it's one of those things that, this is a starting point, but it's perhaps going to be an evolution. And so I don't know if I mentioned that at some stage in the near future, we'll create some sort of support group around it, or some sort of place for the men to come in and connect with other guys, maybe in their situation and things like that. So it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds.
Yeah. I've always seen you doing that, and I think that that's an amazing start. And so, it's already in motion, and I think it'll unfold just rapidly and magnificently in so many different ways. And I think it's I can almost hear like a whole band of women just cheering on right now.
Thank you. Well, they're the ones that can help direct people in this direction too, right? Because we're all good. Everyone's got a role to play here. And particularly with us guys, sometimes we need a push or 8. Yeah. not a push or 2, push or 8.
I love that. And I want to share an analogy. It's kind of off topic, but it's not. But, touching on, divine partnership connections. And obviously that's something that I do a lot of work in and have done for a long time. And it was kind of sparked in a similar way that in you doing what you're doing, because probably for a good couple of years, I would help support people informally through their journey based off my own understanding of my own journey. And I started to see that the threads and the similarities. And it was like, even though I didn't realize I was doing it, I was collecting data at that point. And then I could see the need and that and where the support lies or was needed. And then that sort of developed into the work that I do now. And it's so funny because there's this correlation that keeps coming up, and I laugh about it because obviously you look at the truth, the community, and the frustration and impatience of, you know, feeling like so close to something happening and then like not, and that sort of ebb and flow that happens in the truth of community, you know, whether it's a certain letter drop or, you know, whatever it is, and like dates and this is happening and then like nothing eventuates, and it's almost like breadcrumbing, you know, or dangling the carrot. And so I see the truther community as a very masculine oriented community, not you know, but primarily. And on the flip side of that, in the divine partnership community, it's been the exact same process. Right, the masculine's making a shift, things are coming together, this date, this, and this breadcrumbing for so many years, and I can see the correlation between, and I can see the humor in it, because it's like, it's that information that kind of charges forward, and then there's that ebb and flow of like, oh, it didn't happen, disappointment, dates come and go, blah blah blah. But you know, I also see that as purposeful as well, because it gets people into action.
That's true.
You know, there's a purpose to it all. It's not, you know, frustrating as it is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like you. I let go of all, because for a little while there, I became attached to some of these timelines, and this is going to happen here and there. You know what? And one day I went, you know what? Who's to say all this has to happen on my timeline? What if for the rest of my life I don't get to travel? No, whatever. What's the worst you can do to me? Seriously, even if you were to, you know, end it, it's still not the worst, right? Because we know that things exist beyond that. So you can't hurt me, and it really doesn't matter, because everything will unfold, and ultimately, let's take a saying, and it sounds a little bit probably, you know, it might sound a bit funny to people, but everything leads back to light. And eventually, eons and eons and eons and eons down the track, none of this really, you know, it's all
a drop
back
in the ocean, really.
Yeah.
An important drop in the ocean, but
absolutely. And that's the paradoxes that are everywhere. That I mean, even you look at our own existence, it is ridiculously insignificant, but it's also vitally important and essential. Yeah.
Bit of a paradox, but
I love those.
Yeah. As you were saying that, you know, what really comes to mind for me, or how I see the energetic process, whether it's in the truther community, whether it's in the divine partnership community, we're all working towards the same goal here. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Freedom and liberation.
Yeah.
Saving the planet.
Yeah.
And it's like that install of hope that comes through, of like information or intuitive download, or however it comes, and it almost anchors in that higher timeline. Because I realize that comes through when we're vibrating in a much higher space. And so we're reaching into a future potential timeline that will probably eventually, right? But time is, you know, variable, as we know. And then the dip or the decline is the refinement process. Yeah, to get
so if you
to
can
that,
survive that.
Yeah, to come out to it.
Yeah,
and that's how I see it.
Yeah, cool. That makes total sense. Yeah, absolutely.
So it's like bulldozing through to be able to get to that potentiality, that future potential that
it's just a
we've had.
roller.
Yeah.
So, it's a roller coaster ride. And
then the disappointment and frustration puts us into action.
Yeah.
Do something.
Yeah, true.
So, there's the masculine.
Yeah. But then for me, particularly when I was caught up in all of it, the action that I would take wasn't heart-centered. It was from that fear perspective.
Thank you. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess, again, it goes back to, still making sure that whatever action you're taking is not that fear-based sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautifully summarized. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Once again, I will put the details in the description box where you can connect with Nick and his new Conscious Man project. I will be running a transmission on Wednesday on 5/5, which is radical transformation, and it will be an activation of integration of the subtle bodies, mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical, to access that radical transformation point in the physical reality. But it's very much an integration transmission. So if you are keen to join, I'll put the details in the description box below. And of course, personal sessions are available. I'm back doing that. And until next time, Nick, thank you so much for coming on and chatting.
Thanks, everyone.
Just massive love to everyone. We'll catch you soon. Bye.